Rejoice, Spidey fans! Everyone's favorite arachnid superhero has a movie coming out very soon. Even better, Spidey is a part of the acclaimed Marvel Cinematic Universe, which means he's in much better hands than his previous film series. With over 50 years of comic storylines to pull from, Marvel has got tons of material to work with. Hopefully that means that some of these moments will be adapted onto the silver screen.
Well, I could have stuck the landing a little better. It's just a new suit. Wait, it's nothing. Mr. Stark, it's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't really need to start a conversation.
Okay. Captain?
And hey, if you can relate to this video, then hit the subscribe button below to stay up to date with all our latest videos. Spiderman Lifts, bro. Perhaps the first epic blockbuster storyline in Spider-Man history, the Master Planner saga, is a simple tale by today's standards, but it still holds up great to this day. Just as Peter starts his college life, Aunt May falls ill because of a blood transfusion she received from Peter in an earlier issue. Now we know you're thinking, doesn't Aunt May fall sick as often as I change underwear? Well, yes, but this was 1965. It hadn't worn out its welcome yet, so give Stan Lee a break, would ya? To help out his aunt, Spider-Man enlists the help of Dr. Kirk Connors, who tells him that he must find a special serum that will save his aunt's life. The kicker is that Dr. Octopus has intercepted a shipment of that serum and is holding it in an underground base. Okay, now we've said that out loud. It sounds a whole lot Mr. Freeze's wife and Alfred in Batman and Robin, but we promise it's better than that. The finale of this fight showcases some of the most iconic moments in Spider-Man history. Crushed under the crumbling base, Spidey contemplates giving in to the pain, but his refusal to lose his aunt, like he lost his uncle, pushes him to escape. An epic story befitting of the silver screen for sure.
Leave it.
Hey, might want to take it easy, buddy.
Spidey and the Goblin dinner date. As hilarious as it sounds to have Spider-Man and Green Goblin set up on a blind date, this isn't exactly what we meant by a dinner date between these two. The good news, though, is that the story is still pretty awesome. The story was actually adapted into the 1990s Spider-Man cartoon in the episode Turning Point, but for those who haven't seen it, we'll catch you up. In 1968's spectacular Spider-Man #2, Norman Osborn had actually been free of his Green Goblin persona thanks to Peter knocking it out of him in their previous fight. However, that doesn't last long, and Osborn dons the persona of the Goblin once more. Armed with the knowledge of Spider-Man's secret identity, Osborn sets up a dinner party where he intends to reveal Peter's identity to the party guests. Peter, however, being the quick-witted hero he is, throws some web cartridges into the fireplace to raise the smoke alarms and get everyone out of the building. This being a superhero comic, the two duke it out in a fight which includes Peter being attacked with a psychedelic bomb that makes him hallucinate all his enemies. Don't you hate when that happens? Of course, the hero wins the day, but the journey to get there was a hell of a ride.
Those wings carbon fiber?
Is this stuff coming out of you?
That would explain the rigidity-flexibility ratio, which, gotta say, that's awesome.
Spider-Man leaves the city. The MCU is all about the laughs, right? Well, if Marvel Studio wants to go all in on the humor, then they just have to include this hilarious story from 1985. The story features precisely 0 supervillains. There are no goblins, octopuses, or symbiotes in sight, but yet it is one of the most beloved stories by hardcore Spidey fans. Why? Because it shows Peter Parker at the mercy of his most sinister foe, the suburbs. After failing to stop a thief who fled to the town of Scarsdale, New York, Spidey makes it a personal mission to find the thief and bring him to justice. The problem, though, is that Spidey literally has the worst luck ever. Once he gets to the town, he must contend with drivers who won't let him hitch a ride atop their bus unless he pays the fare, trees which can't support his weight, and barking dogs, which he webs up at their snouts. Spidey, you realize that your webbing lasts an hour, right? Oh my, Spidey killed a dog in this story. The horror! That little bit of sadness aside, the story is great fun. If Marvel wants a story that takes a break from all the world building and villains who want to kill us all, this is one they can take on. Just leave the dogs alone, okay?
Can I do anything for you?
You do too much. College, a job, all this time with me. You're not Superman, you know.
Aunt May finds out the secret. Don't tell Aunt May. That's what Peter Parker tells Tony Stark in his first scene as part of the MCU. What Pete doesn't know is that Aunt May is destined to find out eventually. At least we hope she does, because if this story is any indication, it will lead to a brilliantly told story. After being kept in the dark for years about her nephew's secret, Aunt May finally discovers Peter is Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man #35 Volume 2. May finds Peter battered and bruised from a fight with the villain Morlun, with a torn Spider-Man costume next to his bed. A couple of issues later, May finally confronts Peter and tells him that she knows. Instead of dropping dead at the thought of her nephew being Spider-Man, May instead accepts it, and the relationship between aunt and nephew becomes stronger than ever. Peter is finally able to talk to his aunt about all the pain and suffering he's held onto for so long, and May is able to understand Peter like never before. If that wasn't enough, there's a great little bit where Aunt May fakes an injury in a park and a crowd of people gather around her. The reason? So Peter can climb a tree and save a kitty cat. That wily old lady. Well, we suppose we shouldn't be saying old lady after all. Marissa Tomei still looks smoking. Please, don't look at us like that, Peter. Sorry, dude.
I just want to say I really like what you do. I think it's great.
Thanks.
Spider-Man's Iron Will. For all his amazing powers and abilities, Spider-Man is actually on the lower end of the power scale in the Marvel Universe. There are tons of characters that on paper should be able to mop the floor with our wall crawler. However, that doesn't mean Spider-Man will give up in the face of overwhelming odds. In this classic 1982 storyline, Spider-Man has to stop longtime X-Men villain Juggernaut from abducting Madam Web. Jugs, however, is not the kind of guy who you can stop. After all, not being able to stop him is his whole shtick. We still haven't forgotten his run and smash scene in X-Men The Last Stand. That doesn't stop Spidey from trying his damnedest though. For 2 issues, Peter punches, kicks, webs up, and does whatever a spider can to stop Juggernaut, but nothing works. That is until Peter realizes that strength isn't everything. He lures Juggernaut to a cement mixing plant and distracts Juggernaut long enough to ensure that the wet cement encases Juggernaut to the point where he can't move. While the MCU obviously won't be able to use Juggernaut as he's an X-Men character, just swap out Juggernaut for Rhino or another big hulking brute from Marvel's lineup of big hulking brutes, and the moment works fine. Perhaps Netflix's Kingpin could cross over. Having these brutes show Spider-Man's greatest strength isn't his rare gift, but his intellect and willpower. Can someone hook this boy up with a Green Lantern ring already?
Or, I don't know, I thought it'd be time to get to know each other. Or not.
Select the darkness. While Batman and the Joker may get all the rightful praise for being the best hero-villain relationship in comics, Spider-Man's tangled web of a relationship with the Green Goblin is certainly up there. This storyline is a brilliant example of how complex and creepy Norman Osborn and Peter Parker's feud really is. Throughout the course of a few days, Osborn slowly drugs Peter with a compound that plants mental commands to attack his friends while dressed as the Green Goblin. By the time Peter discovers what he's done, it's too late, and Osborn has captured Spider-Man in a house that Osborn's father locked him up in as a kid. Osborn's dad felt the only way for his son to be a man was to lock him up in this abandoned home for a night to confront his fear of the dark. With Peter being the son he always wanted, Norman tries to psychologically break down Peter into becoming the heir to the Goblin legacy. Despite the drugs and mental torture he endures, he eventually breaks out and defeats Osborn once again. If all that didn't spark your interest, did we mention that the fight between them takes place in a lightning storm? Come on, that has to count for something.
Tomorrow morning, Spider-Man, page 1 with a decent picture this time. Move Conway to page 7.
There's a problem with page 7.
And make it page 8 and give him 10% off.
Okay.
And make it 5%.
That can't be done.
Get out of here!
Hornhead versus Webhead. Superhero versus superhero fights are all the rage nowadays, but comics have been doing that sort of thing forever. One of Spidey's more memorable battles with a fellow superhero came in 1985's Death of Jean DeWolf's storyline. While Spidey rarely has any friends on the other side of the law, Police Captain Jean DeWolf was one who actually supported our hero. She even had a thing for the web slinger, but before she could tell him, she is murdered by the serial killer known as the Sin Eater. Once the killer is about to kill another one of Peter's friends, though, Spidey has enough and beats the non-superpowered Sin Eater within an inch of his life. This prompts the hero who has been helping him track the killer to step in, Daredevil. Severely outmatched, it looks like Daredevil is going to lose to Spidey, but he takes advantage of Peter's delirious state and knocks him out. By the story's conclusion, Spider-Man learns that he isn't above the law and everyone deserves their day in court, even insane serial killers. A long-lasting friendship with Daredevil is formed as well, giving Peter a new ally in the superhero community. This story deals with emotions that we all deal with and is immensely relatable, just like a great Spidey story should be.
Peter's been with us for years. He's done a great job.
You want a staff job and you want a staff job. Anybody care about what I want?
I do.
Shut up. Get out.
Spider-Man meets his #1 fan. You know how we see news stories of adults dressing up as that Amazing Spider-Man 248 by Roger Stern. The entirety of this story takes place in a little boy's bedroom, yet it's one of the most touching stories in the entire Spider-Man mythos. Spidey visits a young boy who is dying of cancer, and who happens to be Spider-Man's biggest fan. He's collected all the Daily Bugle photos, the recordings of when he was a wrestler, all of it. As their time together comes to an end, the boy asks Spidey who he really is. In a rare time where Peter willfully unmasks, he shows the kid his secret identity. As much of a small part of us wanted the kid to transform into the chameleon right after he said this, we don't have the heart for it. This story is fantastic and can easily fit into a post-credit scene in the MCU. Shawarma scenes are fun and all, but this one would leave us just walking out of the theater misty-eyed. Sorry, Tony. Does somebody have a tissue?
Peter Parker. Peter.
Parker! Miss Brent? That's not the position I hired you for.
Harry Osborn's Demons. For our money, Spider-Man has the best supporting cast out of any superhero, with the only contender being Batman. Spidey's love interests are immensely more interesting than Mr. Wayne's Lady Flames. Harry Osborn is a more tragic figure than Two-Face, and is there competition for J. Jonah Jameson? No.
He must have given up, thrown in the towel, abandoned his sad little masquerade.
Back to the story at hand. The conversation about illegal substances use has changed a lot since the 1970s. We understand how they work better than before, and talk of marijuana legalization is strong. Now, if you're wondering what the heck this has to do with Spider-Man, let us fill you in. In this story arc from 1971, Peter Parker's best friend Harry Osborn is dealing with a lot of problems in his personal life. His father has become the Green Goblin once again, and his girlfriend Mary Jane has gotten a little too flirty with Peter. Not to mention, he just realized he has ginger cornrows just like his dad. Sheesh. Seeing no other answer to his problems, Harry develops an addiction. Soon after, he overdoses and is rushed to the hospital. This was groundbreaking at the time because Stan Lee published these issues without the seal of Comics Code Authority, the censorship board of comics at the time. Addiction to pharmaceutical prescription pills is a gigantic problem in the United States nowadays. Putting a modern spin on this story would make for a poignant moment in the MCU.
I can't go to Germany.
Why?
I got homework.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
Spider-Man confronts the burglar. As far as we can tell, Marvel Studios isn't going to touch Spider-Man's origin for the new line of films, and thank God for that. After 2 film series where Spidey's origin is shown, we can use a break from Uncle Ben being shot in front of our eyes. However, that doesn't mean we have to completely scrap everything about the story. There's still a lot of meat on that bone, and for proof, look no further than Amazing Spider-Man number 200. In this story, we finally see the round 2 of our hero versus the very first villain he ever fought, Uncle Ben's killer. After escaping from prison, the burglar breaks into Aunt May's home to steal a treasure that is supposedly hidden in the house. Peter is powerless at this point thanks to the fishbowl man known as Mysterio, so he's subdued by the burglar. However, once the effects of Mysterio's chemicals start to wear off, Spidey confronts the burglar in one final battle years in the making. Just when it seems Peter is going to take the ultimate revenge. After all, who does he hate more than the man who killed his uncle? Spidey resists and decides to take him to police. But then, the burglar dies anyway. From a heart attack brought on by his morbid fear of Spider-Man. Just when Peter should feel good, he realizes that the death of the burglar won't bring back Uncle Ben. For our money, this could be the perfect cap-off to a story arc in the MCU.
Tell Aunt Hottie I'm taking her on a field trip.
Don't tell Aunt May.
All right, Spider-Man.
That's it for our list. What Spider-Man moments from the comics do you want to see on the big screen? Look, we realize that Marvel made a hell with all these suggestions and create new iconic moments, but consider these as gentle reminders to Spidey's greatness. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to CBR for more awesome content.